All right, good morning, and welcome to the 2019 Ames gubernatorial debate. Today's debate prompt will be based on the United States economy. Good luck, candidates. The first question will go to Phil. Phil, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution adopted in 1868 states that some corporations are under equal protection of property in the Due Process Clause, which protects some companies as individuals with the right to monetary success. Do you believe that your Robin Hood economics plan will be considered unconstitutional under the current 14th Amendment?
No, that is a good question, thank you, but I do not believe so, because what I'm really trying to focus on is I'm trying to separate the gap between the extremely rich and the extremely poor. So I don't want there to be such a big gap. And what I want to do is I want to be able, the rich who are in a good position, I want them to be able to provide for those who are less fortunate. And I think that even though I might be taxing a higher percentage to the rich, or that's what we were planning on doing, I'm not trying to make it so the rich go from here to here. I'm just trying to make it go from like slightly de-elevated to slightly elevated to get close that gap.
Thank you. Kyle, although European countries have raised minimum wages over the past decade, such as Denmark at $21 and Germany at $11, this has led to an overall increase in taxes and, as a result, a downturn in the salaries of the general population. How would you balance both a high minimum wage while at the same time not undercutting the salaries of the American people?
That's a great question. So when I raise the minimum wage, my goal is to set the lower income class on a better goal for future attainment. And by doing this, later on and over time, it will eventually close the inequality gap, just as Phil is doing. And at the same time, when the lower income class does not depend as much on government need-based services, the taxpayers altogether will have to pay less for those services, so it's a win-win situation. So after all, the taxpayers do pay less when it comes to those services.
Thank you. Aaron, according to Lincoln Alston, the reader of politics at the University of Warwick, laissez-faire economics is vague and historically elusive, without direct relationship to economic prosperity. How do you believe your use of laissez-faire policy will redefine this notion of its impact?
Thank you. I believe, let me start off by saying that I believe that Oliver Ames is the best school in the Hockomock League. And to answer your question, laissez-faire economics is very simple in concept. I believe that by using it, you can develop a harder contest by having more skilled workers come into play by fighting for higher salaries. You have to get higher education, and as higher skilled workers get higher salaries. And I believe by doing that, you increase the overall level of education and the overall skill level of many jobs and companies.
Thank you. You will now start the second round of questioning. Phil, back to you. The Social Security Act of 1935 has measures implemented to create a Department of Labor Social Insurance Board, which controls and generates legislation as it pertains to Social Security. Under the current legislation, shouldn't the Board of Social Security be able to reform itself as needed without further governmental intervention in both the state and federal sphere?
Yes, that is a good question. Thank you once again, Jackson. That's a great question. So my policy on Social Security is I find it is very necessary because if you think about it, 54 million people just in the U.S. alone depend on it, and 13 million, one-third of senior citizens above the age of around 65 depended on for 90% of their income, which is an annual of $13,000. So although they might want to tweak it and work on it in their states and their legislative ways, I really believe that it's important, and it's in the UN as a right, although we don't follow the UN because the US can make their own decision. I think that they should go back to the 1948 agreement in Article 22 where they state that as such. And also, when it comes to the Social Security, I believe that we should contain it to certain people who really need it.
Thank you. Kyle. Privatized bidding is often the most effective way to maintain public infrastructure in military contracting, but often leads to a poor quality of material item being produced, since the lowest bid is chosen. If privatized bidding were to become more frequent, what legislation would be enacted so that the quality of the material being produced is not hindered while the price is kept at a reasonable level?
Yes, that could be quite arbitrary, though, as well, because privatized bidding, it comes from competition, and competition is the basis of capitalism. And when there's competition, you want the reward, you want to succeed. Therefore, you want to make the best product in order to win. Similar to sports, there's always going to be a winner and a loser. When the loser loses, they have to learn from their mistakes to make their product better to eventually be successful in the future. So yes, maybe lower quality products may be cheaper, but in order to sell your product, it must be a higher quality. So we can relate this back to if you drive by Moreau Hall right now, there's a sign asking for snowplow drivers. Instead of saying, hey, let's collectively hire snowplow drivers, let's have different snowplow driving companies competitively bid against each other. So therefore, we'll have less price for the same quality. So the taxpayers will ultimately be paying less, and we'll spend less of our money in total.
Thank you. Aaron, most primary and secondary educational services and other governmental programs are funded by direct taxes on the American public. With your proposed tax cuts, how would you fund these government-sponsored initiatives?
Well, I would start by cutting down funding in other areas, such as military spending. Our military spending is the highest in the world, and it's more than double the secondary person, and the next leading countries are our allies. We don't need to spend as much as we do on military. I believe that by cutting back on military and increasing funds on education, you can decrease the taxes total, but in conclusion end up with the same level of education, as well as the option of competitive private schools. There are many schools that do this, and by having the best students being able to get scholarships, I don't believe that funding for that will really be a problem, but the option of public school is also still an option.
Thank you. This is now the general question time. Each of you will answer the same question. We will begin with Phil and work our way to Aaron. Phil, the American economy currently has the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years and has returned to its pre-2007 recession economic growth rate. How do you believe that the American economy can improve upon as a whole, even with its recent success?
Well, thank you once again, Jackson. And I would just like to state that somewhere I did read, like I previously mentioned with my campaign, that the UN did state that Social Security was in fact a right. And I know that is not in the US, but I believe that could really be the answer, because when you think about it, all those people that are without Social Security, not only do they not have an opportunity to provide for themselves and for others, they're not able to have a productive life after the age of, say, 62, or even if you wanted to start younger, at the age of 26 or 30, and you wanted to start saving up and adding to that, it would just provide for more people and for more people around the world. When you have people like the military who are coming back to no jobs whatsoever, I think that would be important to instituting them back to society. And you have players like Le'Veon Bell who are making $17.5 million guaranteed and deciding they're not going to play in the NFL. It's just a waste of money, and the U.S. could really use that money in different areas.
Thank you. Kyle, same question. How do you believe that the American economy can improve upon as a whole, even with its recent success?
This question fits perfectly with my third policy, to emphasize self-sufficiency. If we put regulations which emphasizes and incentivizes companies to focus their headquarters out of the United States rather than other countries, we'll have increase in jobs, decrease in national debt, and decrease the leverage other countries have over us. Now back to Phil's point where he is trying to emphasize Social Security. I have three issues with Social Security. First of all, in Social Security, government taps into the trust fund to pay off their own debts. Second of all, the rich prosper off of it as well. If you make a high income, they'll have high returns as well for a program that's supposed to be helping those in need. And lastly, it's supposed to be depleted and estimated by the mid-2030s. So the government can either raise the FICA tax, take from a different branch, or remove the benefits altogether. My solution to this is we erase all of it and create a competitive field in which institutions can have competition against each other to create collective mutual funds into which people can pour their money into for essentially the same
Thank you.
thing.
Your time is up. Aaron, how do you believe that the American economy can improve upon as a whole, even with its recent success?
I believe that the first step would be giving more power to the states. There are many issues that pertain to certain states that do not pertain to others, and by reducing the federal power, you can focus those issues in local governments. And by doing so, you can improve on the local parties and reduce on taxes, and as well as incentivize privatized competition. Kyle brought up the option of companies competition. However, I believe that it also must be amongst skilled citizens competing for jobs. Although this may go towards lower minimum wage. I believe that it will actually raise it as more skilled citizens will work towards the same job, and the job will have to increase their funding in order to get the same level, a higher level of skill.
Thank you. Now you will have closing statements. You will start with Phil and work our way to Aaron. Phil, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Daily Olivian and my competitors, Marsh and MacDonald, for this whole event. I really had fun doing it. In my closing, I would just like to say, with my policies being such as not mentioned, but welfare along with Social Security, I would just like to state that although my opponent, candidate Marsh, stated that he wants to abolish Social Security, I think that's just a very bad idea, because when it comes to the economy right now, we're already in debt, and this is helping keep a lot of people, a lot of citizens out of debt, and I think it's just institutional, and it's really what our country can be found upon, and I think if we adapted this, it would only help our country.
Kyle, 1 minute.
Through my economic policies and tax expenditure reform, not only will American citizens retain their hard-earned cash, but will gain additional benefits and receive higher quality service from the government. Unlike Phil's economic policies, every citizen will earn more for their dollar, and those in need will have a guaranteed future without necessarily taking from the taxpayer's savings. And unlike Aaron's plans, my plans are suitable to an advanced civilization which follows basic human morals, rather than based off of a medieval kingdom whose currency was based off of ownership of land. In addition, my plan to erase Social Security and replace it with a competitive field, which privatized institutions can place one's money in collective mutual fund, will guarantee a healthy future for everyone. This plan will eliminate any poor tax expenditure, ensure one's money is safe, and benefit those who are truly in need. With that being said, I'd like to thank the Daily Olivian, Mr. Schuessler's journalism class, and everyone else who set up this debate. The American dream is still achievable, and through my policies, you will be closer to your goals than ever before. Just remember one thing before you vote on Wednesday. A vote for Marsh is a vote for your money.
Thank you. Aaron, you have 1 minute.
First, I'd like to say that I believe that I embody always Easton's previous governor, Oliver Ames, and his spirit. And back to what Kyle said, I believe that my economic policy does actually pertain to a modern society. Modern society has, in fact, a higher society. At modern society, we have people that are suffering on the streets, that are going hungry, children who die every day because they don't have the protection and the food necessary. Through my system of government, the people will be with the land and be protected by those above them and be sustained by everything that they grow, that they make, everything that they do. Through their economic policies, I don't believe that's possible. And through, as Phil mentioned, Social Security, that is not, it cannot be sustained through history, and it cannot be continued to be sustained.
Thank you very much. This now concludes the 2019 Oliver Ames gubernatorial debate.